So we'll move on now to our next speaker, who is Alex Datema. And Alex is a dairy farmer from the north of the Netherlands. He has a dairy farm with 110 milking cows and 70 hectares of grassland. So on his farm, he practices meadowbird protection on 15 hectares of that grassland, which means he delays mowing of the grasslands. He has herb-rich grassland, and he creates wet spots on the grassland. He's also the chairman of BoerenNatuur, or Farmers Nature, which is a national umbrella organization for all the farmers that take part in agri-environment schemes, and that's 11,000 farmers. So Alex, we're very much looking forward to your presentation, which is on the topic of governance and cooperation.
Thank you, Frank. I hope that everybody can hear me quite well.
Yes, perfectly.
Thank you. My presentation should be shared from Brussels, I think. I'm not having it on screen yet.
While that is appearing, Alex, could I just ask everybody to mute your microphones, please, and put your questions into the chat function. Thank you. Over to you again, Alex.
Thank you for the invitation to tell about how we organize the agri-environmental schemes in the Netherlands and how we think it can contribute to the future of agriculture. Made to the next slide, please. I think most of it that is mentioned here is already said about me. I am a dairy farmer, still practicing my dairy farm, but also president of Farmers and Nature, BoerenNatuur. It's an umbrella organization. And we carry out the agri-environmental schemes in the Netherlands. All the agri-environmental schemes based on hectares are carried out by our organizations. And we also have a long-term perspective on agriculture in the Netherlands. May the next, please. Well, if you look at the organization I am president of, we have 40 collectives, 40 groups of farmers, more or less, and that's the official term we use in Europe. And the groups of farmers are all independent, but together they organized an umbrella organization, BoerenNatuur. What we do is farmland bird protection on the farms. We do landscape maintenance. And together there are now more than 11,000 farmers involved with 100,000 hectares of land. And we have a budget of 85 million. There are more farmers interested in participating in the schemes we have than we have money at the moment. So we have a sort of waiting list for farmers to join the schemes, but there's not enough budget at the moment to help them. May we go to the next, please? This is a map of the Netherlands, so you can see that the 40 cooperatives are all over the place. We cover the whole of Netherlands. On every place in the Netherlands, a farmer can be part of a cooperative who is working on the agri-environmental schemes. Next, please. What we did by the system we have now is working since 2016, and this was quite a system change if you look at it from a historic perspective. In the past, it was that every individual farmer had an individual contract with the government. So it was what we also call it was farm approach. So if you look at what we want to achieve with the agri-environmental schemes, it was looked upon from the farmer's perspective and based on what the farmer could do on his farm. And what we did now with the organization we have now, we look at it from a habitat approach. So we look not on the farm approach, but we look from a wider area, and we want to create a habitat for birds or other species. And you cannot do that on a farm level. You have to do that on a regional level. That means that the collectives, the cooperatives, they are the ones who organize it. So they have the responsibility to organize the whole scheme. The regional government, the provinces in the Netherlands, they have goals with the environment or with the numbers of birds, with the red list species, and they have money, but the cooperatives make a plan. And within the plan, there is room for farmers to join the plan, and they make up a contract with the individual farmer. So the contract is not anymore with the government, but the contract is with the cooperative, and the cooperative has a contract with the government. So it's much more efficient because in the past we had more than 13,000 contracts between farmers and government, and now we only have 40 contracts of the 40 cooperatives with the government. And we think that the effectiveness is much higher because we now have, we're working on a habitat approach instead of just on the farm level. And we think that we made it possible that the farmer is more in the lead. The farmer is more he's more responsible for what he is doing. Next, please. Now, what has been achieved? Well, the regional authorities have granted the subsidy, so the system works very well. If you look at the amount of money that the system works that well, that almost 100% of the budget is also really paid out to the farmer. So the system works in that way. It works very well. The groups of farmers and the cooperatives, the collectives have organized themselves every year a little bit better. So they are now strong parties on a regional level who also have contracts with water boards or other organizations. We take a lot of time to enlarge the knowledge of farmers, of the cooperatives, but also on the farmers. So a knowledge network is developed. So we try to learn from each other and to learn each other different things. The monitoring is done quite well by the corporations, but also in negotiation or in cooperation with the NGOs. And what is kind of special is that the controls on the contracts that the farmers have with the cooperatives is controlled by their cooperatives themselves. So we also have a system of controlling, but there is also still the system of the government who has to control it. Next, please. Now, what we think we have achieved with this system change is happy farmers, because the farmers are now, the system is much more flexible than the old system was. So if you as a cooperative, you make a deal with the government on what kind of habitat you deliver to the government, it's for the government not so important which farmers do it. So we can change the contract with the farmers. We have the cooperative has a contract with the government for 6 years, but the contract with the farmers can be 1 year or 2 years or 3 years or 4 years. And we have the liberty to change the contract with the farmers if they want it, and also if the cooperative wants it to change because it's necessary for creating a good habitat. The next, please. But there is much more going on in agriculture. We are focusing now on landscape, biodiversity, and nature. But we also, if you look from the farmer's perspective, there's also something about climate solutions coming to the farm. We have to deal with the environment problems, for example, nitrogen in the Netherlands, water quality and water quantity. So if you take all that together, there is a lot of things happening on the farm. The farmer has to take action on a lot of different problems to be ready for the future. And in our opinion, then we are talking about a system change. This is not just adjusting your farm a little bit, but you have to look at agriculture in the future in a different way. And I think that is really a system change, and we call that in the Netherlands nature inclusive farming, agriculture. Next, please. We think if you want to reach that system change, if you want to move farmers on, you have to start by focusing on goals instead of measures. What we did the last years, especially in the Netherlands, was taking all kind of measures and forcing the farmers to take measures instead of giving the farmers goals to reach. And that's it's much more challenging for a farmer to have goals than to have to carry out measures. So we have to set goals for the next 10 or 15 years. The goals have to be integral. They have to be part of all the topics I just mentioned. We think that solutions only work if they are area specific, because the agriculture in the Netherlands, but also in the EU, is so different in every region. Now you have to look at the region, what you have to do to reach the levels you want to reach. You have to also translate the goals that you have in a region on the farm level, so the farmer knows what he has to do to reach the goals, and that makes it possible to let the farmer be an entrepreneur. So he can choose his own measures to reach the goals instead of that he has to carry out the measures that somebody else has thought of. We think you can do that by focusing on critical performance indicators. That's something we are developing now in the Netherlands. And what we need is multiple forms of reward for the farmers. Because I think if you really want farmers to do something about nature, to do something about landscape, to take part in climate solutions, then you have to pay the farmer for that solutions, for what he is doing for nature, for what he is doing for landscape, for what he is doing for climate change. And if you try to pay the farmer by raising his milk price or the price for sugar beets or for wheat, then you still stimulate him to produce more milk and more sugar beets and more wheat. And what we need in the future to sustain agriculture is that we also produce a beautiful landscape, that we produce nature, that we take part in climate solutions. And if you want to really challenge a farmer in that, we have to reward his implications he's taking in that form. So we think that's what's one of the most important things to do. So set goals and let the farmer think for themselves how he can reach it. But we cannot do this alone. The next, please. So if you're looking back a little, the history of farming, the last 50 or 60 years, we all were on the same highway. And I think that the future of farming is not on that highway, but is on the sideway. So we have to take the next exit to reach the future of agriculture. And I think the future of agriculture is to combine functions of production for food, but also to combine that with nature production and also get paid for that nature production, so you can still have a livable farm. And the cooperation between farmers is very important in that way. And I think the method we chose in the Netherlands, and the organizing through cooperatives, through collectives, where farmers can join themselves, but also learn a lot from each other, is one of the ways to make sure we can reach a beautiful future for farming. Thank you. That was what I would like to bring in here.
Okay, so thank you very much, Alex. That was a really good outline of what you're doing in BoerenNatuur.